An award-winning chef with an international reputation opened a French restaurant in Singapore in 2010. It was a huge success, earning 2 Michelin stars and getting named on a list of the world's 50 best restaurants. After 8 fruitful years, to widespread astonishment, he closed it down, handed back the Michelin stars, and moved elsewhere. It was a bold and risky decision. So why did he do it? To find the answer, we needed to look at the life and career of Andre Jiang, who was born in Taiwan in 1976. At Restaurant Andre, as the Singapore place was called, Jiang's mission had been to interpret French cuisine in a new and deeply personal way. To do so, he called on his years of experience of cooking in Paris, where he had arrived at the age of 21, unable to speak the language, but with a powerful dream in his heart. By the time Andre went to France, he had already had several years of experience at his mother's restaurant in Japan. Andre was determined to expand his horizons and learn what made French cuisine so special. In the process, he spent 17 years in the country, honing his skills and knowledge at some of the nation's top restaurants. After leaving France, Jiang worked in several other countries before finding himself drawn back to Asia. Setting up Restaurant Andre gave him an opportunity to take his talents in a new direction. He developed an approach to cooking that he calls his Octa philosophy. The term refers to 8 elements that come together to form the basis of every new dish Jiang creates. He calls them pure, salt, artisan, south, texture, unique, memory, and terroir, and each has its own special meaning. Pure, for example, means presenting the dish without seasoning, allowing all the items on the plate to naturally complement each other. While the closure of a Restaurant Andre took many in the restaurant trade by surprise, Jiang knew exactly what he was doing. Having reached the peak of achievement with the place, he felt it was time to move on. Every creation has its moment of perfection, he said. Provided that you're completely satisfied with it, then you're not going to touch it anymore. In other words, Restaurant Andre was as good as it could possibly become, and now he needed a new challenge. It was one that brought him back to the land of his birth. In fact, Jiang had already opened a restaurant in Taipei in 2014 called Raw. It has given him yet another opportunity with which he can challenge himself while also exploring his own cultural identity, as well as reinterpreting the flavors of Taiwanese cuisine. In line with his philosophy of always striving for perfection, Raw is dedicated to providing the best that Taiwan can offer. On its ever-changing menu, you will only find dishes made with the freshest, locally sourced produce used. Most importantly, whatever Andre Jiang decides to do next, he says that the way he thinks, works, and creates will not change. He firmly believes that every restaurant and every chef should have their own identity and will succeed as long as they never stand still or rest on what they have already achieved. Summing up his opinions about cooking, Jiang once recalled a moment of clarity that came during his time in France. I realized that restaurants aren't factories, he said. They're places of self-expression, places where you take inspiration and turn it into food. These are clearly the words of a man who does what he loves and loves what he does.